Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. Happy Sunday. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing good.
Yeah. Hopefully a fun show today. We're going to kind of pick up off where we left off on Friday, if I can get my words right. We did sort of a viewing of the Last Dev live stream. Didn't get to the questions, so we're going to go through those questions now. I think there's like 10 of them. And then maybe cycle back through to the hybrid combat system, and the sieges as well, if we have time, because we didn't spend a lot of time on those. But we're going to kind of first go through some of the questions. The very first question, which was very disappointing to me, is the question of add-ons. And Steven has always had a blank no response to that. I'm disappointed in that.
Why?
I'm not.
Cheating.
I'm not disappointed that they don't have any UI add-ons if they intend to provide, as they were saying, a fairly robust suite of UI modifications that you can apply as you want to get a lot of the similar sort of information. And that's definitely one of those things that's going to be based on the feedback they get.
Yeah, has he ever said exactly why? Like what the concern is? Just that things get automated, or I'm just curious. I've never seen that in an interview. Really, just that he didn't like them. So
I don't know that he's specifically said why, but I can definitely think of reasons why he wouldn't want it for, security, for not having automation cause a bunch of extra data to have to get pulled from the server constantly and refreshed, and having the ability to
more difficult.
Right? pressing one button that targets my target's target or whatever it is. So I could definitely see something where they'll add stuff based on the feedback we give, but they'll probably push back to a point, and that point is the stuff that they specifically don't want players to be able to have access to begin with. I don't think they will disallow DPS and, progress UI stuff. It's probably going to be a little bit of a battle, both, players arguing with each other as well as perhaps even internally with the team about who's, for or against it and such. But ultimately, I would imagine with enough effort, people would be able to get like DPS meters and all that sort of stuff put in if they really wanted.
I hope not.
I'm someone who obviously likes data, and disappointed when I'm not going to have access to that. I had done a map project for a previous game. That was something that would be fun here, but if you don't have access to any API, you don't have access. So it becomes a little bit more difficult in how to do that, but there are ways around it.
Figure out a way, yeah.
Then you just become much more have to rely much more on players, right? But which is fine. But anyways, I guess I could see, the early days of World of Warcraft and the sort of heal bots that you have, literally just, whether you right click, center click, left click on the nameplates, they would get healed, direct heal over time. Definitely made it probably too easy, but
DPS meters are a common thread topic in the forums. They were talking about that, 6 or 7 months ago? I haven't been on the forums for most of the year. And I went back today, and they're still talking about that again, and it's really the same people, 2 or 3 people saying the same thing they said 7 months ago. But for DPS meters, I'm hoping we can stay as far away from that as possible, because my experience is that party and raid leaders use that to dictate to other people how they must play. When I was playing Neverwinter Online, I joined a party with a streamer that I'd been following, and I was playing an ice wizard, and I'd got to max level and was hanging out with them for a dungeon crawl, and they stopped and said, "Why aren't you using repel spells in this dungeon? That's much more efficient than ice." I'm like, "Because I'm an ice wizard." Like, "But your DPS will be better for us if you use repel." "But I'm an ice wizard, so no." People need to get, it's an RPG. We need to get around just the meta of it. Find other ways to defeat the. It doesn't have to be as efficient as possible.
But it was a bad RPG.
I'm just saying, it's what we're playing as an RPG. So
yeah, no, I'm saying that example you give is great, because I'll go back to D&D. If you're making an ice wizard, you're probably going to roll an evocation wizard and pick up every single ice spell that you can along the way. Level 4, you're probably going to take the feat that gives you better vulnerability penetration for your ice spells. But that's because D&D actually is set up for you to have a limit. It isn't, here's your entire, well, maybe it is for clerics and some other casters, but for like a wizard, it isn't, here's your entire toolbox. You have access to all of these at all times, but you're only going to use 6 to 8 of them. It's more like, you take the things that you need and you specialize for what you need, for what you think is going to be the situation between now and the next time you get to take a big, long sleep. So, it's different implications than something like an MMO, where if you have 8 abilities on your hotbar that are different elements from the different things that your wizard could know, but you focus on ice spells, that, everyone's going to complain, because in role-playing a character, you are like, leaps and bounds far away from what is considered efficient gameplay, and potentially even the gameplay you're designed to play with to complete that dungeon to begin with.
Well, to complete it efficiently. Which I don't care about, because I'm role-playing. It's a role-playing game. But
then there's also back spawns. You have to move at a certain pace, otherwise things will pop up behind you.
When I'm playing, when I get to a place where I can solo that or duo that, I don't have problems with that. I find ways to make it work, and it might take me a few runs to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I've never had a problem figuring out how to defeat a dungeon once I'm able to go through it.
Fair enough.
It's not efficient, but I don't care about efficiency. I care about playing my role. And one of the nice things, and I'm hoping we'll get more of this with Ashes, and they mentioned it, I think maybe this stream or the previous one, about, or we talked about adding a bleed. If you add a bleed, there will be augments that other players have and abilities that other players have that can feed off of that. Or if I'm an ice wizard, what abilities or skills or augments does Neuro have to take advantage of something that's under an ice spell?
Well, and that's also within your own character makeup, right? I think I read the example was your weapon skill could include a bleed, and then your active skill could include a backstab that also has some percentage damage increase if it was a bleed applied, and that way you start to mix.
Yeah, but that's everyone. It's not just individually, but that way your party can be like, oh, we know Diggs likes to use ice spells, so we're going to bring stuff with us that can take advantage of that, versus, oh, you must spec to fire because fire has the most DPS.
Well, I had commented on this not Friday, but the last Sunday show, that I would love to see a scenario where we get to where AI sort of changes based off the group makeup, rather than you planning ahead of time on what the encounter will be. The encounter sort of changes based off what you have, because that helps, maybe not entirely, but that helps solve some of that, right? Because then, if someone might not yell at you at being an ice mage, because the encounter will automatically somehow change because of the fact that you're an ice mage. I obviously wouldn't still get around all of it necessarily, but I wish one day that could happen. One day.
I would say in terms of a DPS meter being the be all and end all for damage output, it's going to be a very, very, very poor way to actually judge who's actually putting out the highest damage for two reasons that I'm hoping will be proven true during gameplay. One is that it's not an auto attack game. You aren't standing toe to toe with something and mashing a hot bar, looking at a meter to make sure that you're, straddling the minimum DPS threshold without going over your main tank's aggro. That's boring. That's not this game. So that's one of the things that will be really confounding. You have to move to your target. You have to move from your target. You have to change targets. And then the other is the fact that it's not an instant direct damage single target game. Every spell and shot isn't magic missile. Every attack doesn't hit one target. You're going to be hitting a lot of things at once, and depending on how the aggro changes and how things cluster around, how you move into the clusters and taunt them, it's going to change the dynamic of how many things you're hitting at once. And it might be that you're hitting half as hard as the hardest hitting person in the group, but because you're able to get into a cluster and hit 5 things at once constantly, you're able to generate way more total damage. You're not killing the things faster. You're still going to need your buddies to help kind of pick off the things as you're weakening them, but it's something where now the fact that you're spec to get in a group and hit more things for less damage is doing more damage than your other character in the party who just deals a ton of damage, but mostly to a single short range target. They're your boss killer, but they're not your, mob smasher. They're not your dude that's taking care of all the ads for you. And I think a lot of that's the stuff that's going to really confound using like DPS meters and stuff like that. What it's going to come down to more than anything, I think, is almost more like the way that they rate StarCraft players, where it's actions per second. How many different things are you looking at and taking account of and, acting on and interacting on with? And
again, I'm hoping it's not about seconds, because that's so meta. Like,
right. Well, what I was going to say is that I don't think the timing is actually going to be that fast and precise that you need it. But go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to
reiterate. I already said it. I'd prefer people to be focused on, hey, is he taking advantage of that ice spell? Is he taking advantage of the bleed? Is she taking advantage of the fact that person is rooted? There's people doing stuff, and I really got that from I think it wasn't Sword Art Online. It was the other one that I'm forgetting the name of. I think. Where it's an anime that's based on being stuck in an mmorpg, where that was the thing. The rookie group came in to a dungeon to fight, and each person was acting like an individual. This is the way I normally fight solo, and the leader looked around and said, okay, so we have to ask the question, why do you like to use that spell? I notice you always lead with this, and because of this reason. And then everybody goes, oh, okay, so if you're going to do that, we're going to do this. And I wish we had more conversations like that than why aren't you using your highest DPS? Because I'd rather not everybody be cookie cutter. I'd rather. But I also saw on the forums today, I hate chaos. Nobody wants chaos in their games. We want, and I think it was in the DPS. We want to be able to use the DPS in order to know how people should fight and all this. And I'm like, I'm chaotic good. I want chaos and pretty much as much chaos as you can get. So I would rather have a lot of diversity in our party and adjust to that rather than everybody being cookie cutter and there being very little diversity.
I want an enemy to have a mesmerize spell that causes all of your meters to just go completely out of whack.
Well, the second question which actually the next two I thought personally were kind of interesting. The second one was after a siege. So let's say you have a freehold in a node, a siege occurs, and your node is conquered. You lose out. The question is, can only attackers or defenders attack your freehold? It was a very interesting answer. The answer to that right now is anyone can come in and take your freehold. There's a period of time where it's vulnerable, and they do not have to necessarily be part of the attacking group. And as always, he says that's the current Alpha 1 build. That could always change based off of feedback, but that is how it is set up. The way it currently runs, there's a period of time where you become vulnerable. If you are successful in protecting your freehold, you then have, I think it's a week period is what they said, a grace period of 1 week, where if that node then resurfaces as a level 3 node, you are able to complete a quest. And if you are able to complete a certain quest line or do some sort of activities, then your freehold becomes part of the new node. But it was an interesting answer that anyone can kind of come in and pillage your freehold.
Yeah, we knew that. We knew that from 2 years ago. They've talked about that, and I think it seems pretty fair. You can have, because I'm typing in chat right now, you can have NPCs guarding your freehold, so you have some protection even if you're not online when the siege happens, and it's not like you permanently lose the freehold. You can, I mean, the siege means that the place is destroyed anyway, so it's not like you can go in and do much with it in any case, but just move it somewhere else. It's going to take time, but people came in and just took over the town, and you lost your stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
The thing that I want to know the most is what sort of property and progress can they take from you? Like, if you've researched this, absolutely fantastic sword that you're the only ones who know how to make just there on that freehold specifically, and they come barging in and, steal all your blueprints, is that a thing? Or can they steal your blueprints? Is that, like, what level of informational loss can somebody suffer? What sort of progress loss, losing your tools, losing your machines, all of that sort of stuff? Because I think that's perhaps the bigger issue. It's not, oh no, I lost some gold. Oh no, I lost some wood and some steel. It's, oh no, I have lost the ability to produce this very specific niche item that we were the ones that were making. And, it could very well be that you being the ones who own this and have this was the reason for the raid. And they specifically came to burn your shop down.
Well, and the reason obviously given, is they want everyone to have some sort of reason to participate in node siege war, right? That even if you're not a PvPer, there's some reason for you to participate, either providing goods or fortifying things.
Or protecting your stuff.
Right. And so in that regard, I think if you're restrict the winning team as the ones able to come take your freehold, then I think that makes sense that you would add that layer of I should participate. The idea that anyone could come in and just sort of raid your stuff while you're out helping.
I don't think it's while you're out helping, though.
It
becomes available afterwards.
Yeah,
so it's only if
but
you
how
lose
long?
the siege.
Right? Do you have time to run back from the node to your freehold? If you were there actively participating, like, what's the travel time? What's the time it takes for it to become? Because then what happens is you could have sort of these. I envision marauders out in the countryside. They know what a siege is going on, and so groups just sort of waiting, right, to see who wins, so they can just rush right in to take whatever they want from whatever freehold they want. To me gives me no reason to go to the node, the siege, right? That to me would make me want to stay at my freehold to actually try to secure it and fight it off. We don't know enough, really.
I don't think so
far,
because that doesn't happen until after the siege is over, really. So,
but if there's no fast travel again, is it immediately after? Because if it takes
it's not that far away. It's part of the node, but again, you're gonna want to participate in the siege to prevent the parameters of when it's possible to. There's no reason for you to stay there. There's no reason to stay there if the siege is gonna if the siege is gonna be defended, if the city is gonna be defended without you. Why would you stay there? You want to fight to prevent it from opening up, right? And even if you do stay there, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to defend it against a raid of marauders.
Yeah, but again, I think there's just a very distinct difference between if it's the people that actually conquered your node being the ones able to come and try to raid the countryside versus just some random 10 per 8 person.
You want to make
group.
sure that no one can do it.
No, I'm okay with the idea of whoever has. If I'm within the zone of influence of a node of a metropolis, I'm fine with the siege. I know what you're getting at. I don't want to lose my stuff, but I would be fine if my side was on the losing side and the winning side, the people that participated were then able to come and have sort of secondary battles. That's fine with me.
What I'm saying is a person who just a character in the game.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a siege, they're not going to say, "Oh well, I'm just going to stay here just in case because the winning people. I'm okay if the winning people take my freehold away from me." That's not going to happen.
They might if they don't. That character might if they don't think they can contribute very much, and they know that there's a group just around the bend waiting to take over their stuff. Then
people
the character
are
might
take
have
the stuff anyway.
But
unless you prevent the siege from being successful.
Well, there'd be a difference between someone 30 seconds away and someone who's 30 minutes away. You
don't know how many people are going to be there, so right?
I mean, that's correct. That's the whole point of what I'm getting at.
If you can't protect your freehold from the siege, you can't protect your freehold from a raid of marauders either.
Maybe I'm not the one at the head of the metropolis making decisions on how to fortify and defend the node. I might do better at my freehold than the leader of the.
You think you're going to be so badass that you're going to take out?
I am going to have the best GD carrots that people are going to want to come steal them the second they can. My carrots and my potatoes.
Right. I'm saying, so how are you going to stop those 30 people from taking your freehold?
I'm going to eat all that shit before they get there.
Which you could do in any case. So how are you going to stop whoever it is? If it's 30 people, how are you going to do that? It doesn't matter whether. But
that's what I'm arguing is that those 30 people should not have that ability, that access, if they did not participate in the siege. That's the root of what I'm getting at. So.
That's life, but.
Well, it's not life, but.
It is not life. So if there's a siege and marauders can come in and steal people's stuff, they don't do it. They say, "Oh well, I didn't participate in the siege, so I'm not." I mean, look at the.
I mean, I don't have any marauders in my neighborhood, but.
Well, tell that to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think
we're not going to go down that path.
I'm just saying. That's what people do.
It's one of those things where we're going to need more information from them. Honestly, what can be taken, what can be lost, who can actually go after a freehold, what can they do there, all of those terms. I think that's something that they maybe aren't as concrete on their own yet, and that's why they haven't actually really talked about it as much and revealed too much about it. Could very much be a point of internal debate, or it could be something that they're just deciding they might do a few different versions in a few different test phases and then, go based on the feedback from each one. So I have no idea how they're going to go forward with it. It's been talked about, but I
don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a significant loss, but not a devastating loss. I don't think it's.
I would hope that it's a loss of resources, but not a loss of means and exclusivities.
Yeah, you go back, you rebuild your freehold somewhere else, and you've got your blueprints. Then you just have to regather your resources to do it, which is a pain in the butt. But
And the hope would be that there's some freehold somewhere that's like, oh, you were the people that were making that, really awesome sword in that one place that got wrecked. Well, come on and set up shop here. Mm-hmm. So it might not even be that abysmal. There's probably going to be a lot of that of, groups and guilds and whatever that are spread out around in multiple locations, and when maybe they even know, okay, well, an attack is on the way from this place to this place, so we're going to move all of our resources from this place to our headquarters over at this place, and then we don't care what gets lost in the attack because we've already moved things.
Yeah.
And thanks for the host, by the way. Always happy
Simmer.
to have new people. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a name I recognize.
Yeah. For those that are new, we are the Theory Forge group. Been doing this for about 6 years, and Ashes of Creation for about, what now? 2, 3? I don't know, since it started, 2017.
Yeah. Seems like
We took a tiny little 7-month break, but so we're just going over the questions. Touchy point of discussion right now is whether once a siege occurs, whether a freehold should be able to be attacked by everyone or just the people who actually won the siege. So interesting discussion. So yeah, thanks again. So I think we got several more questions. We could probably spend an entire show.
Just one thing that I'm thinking of there, that does make me think about where I would want my freehold to be if a different race. Even when it pops to the new one, would I be setting up my freehold for races, and would a different race matter? When somebody else retakes that area.
That's going to affect. Yeah. Though that goes into the broader question I've had about not just NPC persistence, but I'm going to push it a step further, and cultural persistence. That you've kicked the people that look like this out of the place, and you want it to look like this because that's who the new people's architecture looks like. But does that mean all of the freeholds are going to get kicked over or repainted or all of that stuff? Or likewise, we had talked about the idea that initially they said the NPCs, if it ranks down and ranks back up as a different race, the NPCs will get swapped out for completely different characters because they won't be the same race anymore. And that just seems like such a weird thing to me. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of ties back into that a little bit, back into the idea of what actually, what elements of a culture and society exist within each node, within each region. And then even within one freehold to the next, you've got your Capulets and Montagues, they're feuding families and other families adjacent to them or whatever. That's culture right there. Mm-hmm. As soon as a place gets knocked over, or as soon as it gets upgraded in some other way, that all goes away. They somehow become the Hatfields and McCoys. That's weird.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, am I going to want to? Do I want my freehold there with the enemy people who took it over? Or do I want to help them after they sieged my I don't know.
What was I was typing, so I didn't hear the original question about race. What was with your freehold?
Oh, it was the idea that if you have, let's say you're tier 3 of one race, and then it gets knocked down to a tier 2, and build up back up to a tier 3, but a different kind of prevailing race is the one that's the group that's in charge. It's going to get built up in a new way, which means all the NPCs that had been there as the tier 3 version before are gone. They're going to be swapped out with some new.
But your freehold won't change.
Your freehold won't change.
No, it won't change.
But I'm not sure. I wonder what the extent of that's actually going to be.
And my question is, will I? Because I'm likely to. I'm likely to be adjusting my freehold to what's around me, whether that's race or the people, the players or characters. I mean, I'm just wondering how I'm going to want to change my freehold, or do I still want my freehold there based on the new people around me or the new race around me? Same thing.
And you might not, but I think you would probably prefer just to pack up your stuff and go than someone steal it all, right?
I don't know. It depends on how difficult it is to get it back.
Good point. Next question. Does your gear held in bags lose durability when you die? The obvious answer is no. You weren't wearing it. I think that's how that is for most games, correct? There's really not a lot to talk about.
Actually, something we've been playing recently doesn't do that. If you die and do a first respawn, yep.
I thought it doesn't affect gear and bags. Does it?
Nope. Everything you're carrying.
Because I've not had to repair it. Okay.
Yeah, everything you're carrying. It was probably just trash that you had just sold it before or whatever that was in your bag. But yeah, Albion does. Some games do, some games don't. So I can't recall exactly 100% because it's been a while since it was originally talked about. What exactly is the death and respawn system? Which model did they go with? I used to remember, but is it you die, you respawn as a ghost at a graveyard and walk back to your corpse? Is it?
I don't think so. I think you just end up somewhere else.
You just respawn somewhere in hole somewhere else?
Yeah. I don't think there's a corpse.
All right. So, I don't know. Durability loss.
There are other points.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there are other places, other interviews where he talks a lot about time, money sinks and other things in order to sort of keep a balanced economy. So I mean, it makes sense. But.
The one for me on durability loss goes back to one of the 8 big documents I wrote for Landmark. The idea that an item could potentially be improved with each repair as it loses durability, as things need to be reforged and replaced and metal re-added to sections and stuff like that, that it can be slowly improved along the way, along those processes, into something that through being battle worn and rebuilt and improved, and all of the let's say magical essence of all of the things you fought along the way being part of the vector for those improvements, that you're able to keep using the same item for a while, and it keeps getting a little bit better every time you repair it, as long as the reason why it got broken down was something meaningful. If it wasn't, if it was just you died a bunch and you've got to fix it, then there's none of that extra kind of magic to it, and it's just going to be a standard repair, and that's all you're going to be able to get out of it. I think that would be a nice sort of thing for them to think about and give a shot to here, but that's for their design team to think about. There's a lot of reasons why not to do something like that, because it means every individual item has that much more data going into it, which I'm fine with, but they might not.
Woodchip was saying that there's something in the wiki that says there's lore around, there's storyline that relates to how and why characters respawn and the locations in which they respawn. This will be revealed to players later.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of the lore is
as players explore the game.
There's actually quite a bit out of there, though. I mean, especially if you get on the wiki and look around. Actually, it kind of applies partly to the next question, not directly, but was basically are artisan crafts affected in any way by race, religion, or archetype? And the answer to that was no. They are completely separate systems.
I didn't understand that question. So
I think, so if you went, would a certain race have more affinity for a certain type of artisanship? Or if you took a different religion, would that somehow influence your ability to harvest certain things or craft certain things?
I got you.
I'm a little disappointed in that answer. I liked the idea of having meaningful choice, and I feel like those are two pretty big, three really. Race, archetype, and religion are kind of three, pretty big. Thanks for the follow there.
Well, then you start becoming racist, so I think I prefer not having that.
Well, I think you can. Well, again, I think of it as in ways of how can you create instances where it makes sense. The
racism does not make sense.
No, I'm talking.
Okay. how about this, Diggs? What if it was just a poll of here's, the races and here's corresponding crafting disciplines and, vote for which ones you think, correlate most with each one. And at the end of polling, we're going to aggregate the results. And that's how we're going to determine what races are, have an affinity towards this and that. At that point, it's just, something that they want to assign that ability and they want to do it along racial lines, but
Which
don't want to do it in a way where it's necessarily partial to one race or another because it's being voted on by the players.
Players can be racist. It doesn't matter who's choosing to make it racist. It's still racist. And so that
I guess assigning like cloth to elves is racist. You're right.
I mean, yeah, because of your race, you're not capable of doing X. That's racist.
It's not that you're not capable of doing X. It's just that your culture and your people and the way that they've grown and developed over the years.
That you as an individual can never learn to do that. So the broad thing would be fine, but when you're limited by race, because I chose this race.
No, I'm thinking by saying that
I, as an individual, cannot.
No, that's
achieve
not
this level. That's racist.
No, I don't.
And that's
I don't think
that's
that's
have in RPGs.
Yeah, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm thinking more like of a dwarf. Are they better wood stone cutters? So they get like
that's
a plus
what I'm
5.
saying. Individuals cannot be reduced to that. That's racist.
It's it's definitely a valid point. So for you then, anything along racial lines that would grant some sort of exclusivity is not appropriate. But how about religion?
What about religion?
If you participate in a certain religion, would you have an affinity towards crafting one certain thing better than another? And the one with that kind of changes things a little is that if you're actually using the power of a tangible god or deity, it might be that they're empowering and giving you the wisdom to be able to perform this task, and that's the only reason why you can do it.
Religion is a little different, I think, because you can change religion if you want to.
Can you worship a pantheon and everybody have all their the gods' abilities?
I don't know. I'm just saying. But the difference is that you can't change your race.
Right. Well, we actually don't know that. I don't think they're going to have a race transmogrify machine, but, they could.
So the next question, I didn't really understand the question, but I understood the answer. Were there plans for level 50 to be a soft cap or a hard cap? Like, could you level beyond that? And I'm not sure why you would level beyond a max level, but the answer was basically there's going to be a lot of avenue for horizontal progression, which I think is a great...
Yeah, it was cool to hear him mention that. It was nice.
Everyone's wanting to stay out of our conversation. Augments, but augmenting religion, other ways to sort of progress your character, which makes sense. And that also ties into the idea that Stephen has said a lot of times there is no end game, right? This isn't a game that has sort of an end game as you think of it in terms of World of Warcraft or something like that. It's a changing, evolving world, and nodes are central to the idea of it not being end game.
Let's see. I'm going to have to look it up.
Can you repeat that? I was watching chat.
I was just saying the idea of horizontal progression, we often tie a lot of things into end game at that point, right? You reach a max level. Stephen has made the point
max level's not the same thing as end game, even though he did
mention
end game.
But yeah, he has frequently said there will be no sort of end game.
Yeah.
Which again ties into horizontal level.
But yeah, max level, then you want more kinds of horizontal progression available. But even before you hit max level, you might want that. So, and as I've said, I think I said in the previous one, what I liked about EverQuest Next, and as we talk about the bloat of vertical leveling, I prefer shallow vertical level and broad horizontal level. So we have a lot of diverse types of things to do rather than, trying to achieve 200,000 hit points.
Thanks for the follow, Abby. But yeah, that's a great answer, just because, again, the idea of burnout, how do you, I really hope dailies are not in here. That's a whole different sort of discussion, but yeah, no end game.
So something regarding like a soft cap, I think about with D&D the way they do for 5th edition, and I'm pretty sure some other editions have done it, maybe with some variation, is once you've hit max level, there's a certain, I think it's like 300,000 experience. Every extra 300,000 experience you get access to another epic boon ability, which is like not something that's available in the normal 1 to 20 progression. It's something that's more specifically being granted to like a heroic character for a heroic sort of action that they've done or task that they've completed. So I could see it being something like that, if you, or what the person was kind of asking, that you get to a certain level and then you start getting, as you upgrade through the additional thresholds, maybe your health doesn't increase more, your mana doesn't increase more, your attributes don't increase more, but you get little specific things like, other side grade abilities or other access to things you didn't have before. I don't know. That was just the example I thought of there.
This one was the next question was also kind of interesting, and it had to do with Asmongold interview and flight paths and sort of clarification. There are sort of two different systems. The interview was referring more to a specific type of metropolis node. It's, technology. Are they able to create travel within their actual, zone of influence, all this regional sort of area? And that was separate of the idea that each individual metropolis will also be able to have some sort of connection in the broader world. Which is, again, another interesting thing, considering there was so much anger is probably not the right word, with the idea of fast travel with families and being able to summon a family. Like the entire discussion on that was centered around the idea of fast travel, but you have actually other avenues as well. So you should probably look at the whole picture.
Sorry, I keep focusing on chat. What was that question and what was the answer?
The question was around, let me find the exact wording, flight paths and scientific nodes. It had been during a previous interview. And Stephen just sort of clarified that there's two different systems, one of sort of flight paths between metropolises or larger distances, the ways to connect areas of the world. And then scientific nodes can have smaller, if they choose to go into that avenue of building their node, they can also create more fast travel flight paths between regions specific to their zone of influence or their area, more regional. I think that's fine, but I was just tying that into when there was this discussion of families, the biggest knock on that, families being able to summon, you have I think it's an 8-person family, and you can summon members of your family to you. And the big outcry about that was that it was fast travel, that it'd be abused. I'm just thinking in my head, there's going to be other avenues of also sort of quicker travel. So
yeah, I mean, it's going to be abused.
It's not exactly the same, but
once every 12 hours, it'll certainly be abused. Sure, I'm sure it's going to have a stringent limitation. You're going to be able to use stringent. That's going to prevent you from being able to use it very frequently. And while there is still definitely cases for abuse, for example, one of them sits out in the sweet mining spot that nobody ever goes to, and 6 of them basically get teleported out, and you use them for the harvesting and the farming and the mining. And then once you've got your inventories full, you get someone back to the one that's at the bank and stash all your stuff, put it on the auction house. I can see how that'd be a concern. I think one of the limitations is if every 12 hours, for example, is the limit on being able to use the family portal, everybody has to go through it, and all of the family members who are online who are using it have to agree that, Uncle Joe's teleporter is the one you're going to use and not Aunt Sally's, in case both of them create portals in different locations.
I'm just not sure how that prevents Steven's concept of zerging, in that you could have different people in your guild with each the leader of a 8-person family, and then you've got your guild basically portaling to the same spot, which is...
How about if you can only do it in certain locations? Like, you can't be at a dungeon and then portal your family, and you have to do it at the inn in the town.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I want instant travel is if I'm watching because we did this in Landmark a lot. If I'm watching a stream, like Friday's live stream, and Maggie says, "Hey, we're going to be at XXX. Come join us," and that's on the other side of the world. How do I get there to join the devs for their after show party?
I would hope if they're going to do something like that, they give us long advance of where to go, or maybe there's like a public test server we all jump on and join there or something.
Well, but other people, that's when the devs are controlling it, but other streamers could be doing the same thing.
That's true.
We used to do that with Wizard 101. There was a weekly live stream, and at the end they'd say, "Hey, we're going to be hanging out at this location. Come join us after the show." And even though I'm mostly solo in mmorpgs, I'm hot. Solo for me means not formally joining a group. I'm highly social, so I'm showing up for parties everywhere, and I want to be able to do that. Sometimes that involves instant travel, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. This was also interesting. I don't think this is exactly how the question was worded, but it was a question regarding PvP. So in PvP, how could you identify classes by, with their 64 classes as you're engaging someone? How can you identify who you're, what exactly you're coming up against? Because with skins and other things, obviously you at transmogs, you could very easily sort of mask yourself. And so the answer to that was there will be sort of in the nameplate, you'll be able to see a variety of things, kind of their class. I think I wrote it down. Class name, combination, level, gear grade, and type as well. So there was a question of whether there was actually, he mentioned gear score. I really don't remember him saying that. I remember saying level, but I took that to mean player level, not gear level. Maybe I just remembering wrong.
I think there is not gear score, if I recall correctly. But
I like that you can't actually, you might not just be able to tell who's who in a fracas. That actually adds more to the intrigue of it, that you can't just start making your battle plans before you start clashing and know, okay, we're going to CC that person, we're going to, get the rogues behind on that person, we're going to do this and that. And knowing that these are the strategies and they're all well rehearsed because, you're a force of this type and you always go against a force of this type. Instead, the compositions being completely different, not being able to tell by a silhouette, by the attire somebody's wearing, exactly what they're up to, what they're capable of. Obviously, how well they actually play that character, what level raid gear that they're wearing, etc. So it's something that I actually think does a little bit more for the game and is advantageous, that you don't know who's who in a big old scuffle, that you can't just pick people out and be like, all right, they're this, and act accordingly. You have to play your game, you have to work with your people and use your tactics, and flex with the situation as it comes at you. I think that's going to be really the sign of a good group, is no matter what they're going against, they can develop the tactics on the fly and take care of the situation as they need to, without it just being like a cookie cutter. All right, we're 8 wizards, we're gonna blink in with our heavy armor and cast all of our arcane nukes, and then we're out of mana, so we hope they're dead.
Yeah, the way to recognize is, again, it's not really 64 classes. It's 8 archetypes.
Correct.
And then, so 8 primary archetypes, and then each of those have 8 secondary archetypes. So, because they're going to be casting their primary abilities, and then on top of that, they'll be augmenting them with different stuff. But you'll know because you can recognize what the primary abilities are, and that's going to tell you what their primary class is.
I'm just wondering how combat will be, especially if there's this hybrid action. Like, how will you be able, if you have 5 or 10 people running at you, how easily are you going to be able to see on a nameplate?
No, just hit all of them.
No, I don't need to see on the nameplate. I can just see what ability they use. If somebody grabs somebody,
no, visual
with the
tells
lasso,
are part of it.
If somebody, just whatever their spells are, if somebody grabs somebody with the lasso and reels them in, then I know what their class is. I know they're not a rogue. I know they're not a summoner.
Well,
I'm going to recognize the spell.
Yeah, no. I get you.
And visual tells are a part. I mean, they've also commented on that with raids and other sorts of things. So it's a good answer. That's always a question, especially when there's cosmetics running everywhere. How do you exactly know what you're up against? The next question was asking basically how in 10 to 15 years from now will you make your game look good? Which is, or it seems very optimistic to think of 15 years from now, but we have examples now. EverQuest is 20 something years?
Yeah, some of those games are pretty old now.
But his answer basically was related to Unreal and Unreal 5. They talked about upgrading to Unreal 5. Actually, interestingly, kind of touched a little bit, Nur, on what you had made the comment of when we've talked about this before, that Unreal does somewhat make it easier to switch, because you always hear, games developed on Unity often will stay largely within whatever version, that the majority
Either
of
that or
on.
they can only get to a point and then they have to chase version after version after version until they find one that allows them to continue with enough stuff not broken and the debugger not crashing every 2 stops. Unity is just a burning garbage fire. But actually, they specifically featured in the release notes for Unreal 5. It's like, hey guys, you want to get on the Unity or the Unreal 5 engine as soon as you possibly can? Well, start building an Unreal 4 project because we're going to let you port it instantly. So that's basically why, if you're making an Unreal 4 project right now, you're stoked for 5, you can just switch right on over. It's probably going to be a little bit of stuff you're going to have to modify and change. You might have to upgrade your textures a little bit more to make everything look pretty again. There's going to be new architecture and things that are different, but by and large, they make it sound like it's going to be, almost like a drag and drop to be able to go from 4 to 5, and that's pretty sweet.
I don't know that I'm going to care that much. I mean, Firefly looks pretty good, even though it's, 20 years old. I mean, I'm not going back and watching Firefly and going, oh my God, that looks like the original Star Trek.
Things look pretty damn good already. So I don't know how much it's going to improve.
It's also to discredit what the game's already able to do. If you've got some beast that's going to be running it in 16K with everything set to super ultra, you got 4 graphics cards in there and 2 12-core processors. Yeah, it's already going to look way prettier than what we've seen in the presentations, because you're doing way more. You're going above and beyond what hardware normally would do, but you aren't going above and beyond what the Unreal 4 engine is able to output and make pretty.
So we've on our previous shows, we've also talked about I mean, if the mechanics of a game are great, if the game is just fun to play, the ideas that have been put forth, I'm pretty sure most of us would play it in a low fidelity setting if we could.
Yep.
I would. If I had the absolute vision of nodes, how it was initially presented way back at Kickstarter, I would happily play that in a low fidelity world. I don't have to have everything. I like it being pretty, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I mean, they had said Pre-Lyria for that other game was going to be the, just an early version. It's like, nah, ship it. That looks great. I want to play that.
The low poly version of COE looked great. If they had done the Minecraft version, I would have been like,
Well, I didn't say blocky. I said low poly.
No, I know. I'm saying. So for me, it's not just because Neuro will actually play anything regardless of what it looks like. And there's tons of stuff that he says, "Hey, let's play this," and I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm not playing that. The game looks horrible." But I'm fashion over function. And actually, same thing with comic books. Certain artists would come along on comics, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I got to put that down because that art is horrible." And I'll wait for different artists to come along with great storyline, but I'm not reading it if the art is bad. So that's me. That's the same for playing games.
So we're actually running pretty good on time. We have, I think, 3 more questions. The last 2, though, are kind of one we've already talked about, which was freeholds taking on the appearance of the racial structure, or do you get, as the owner, to dictate how it looks? And we already kind of talked about that. You get to. The other was, can I keep a house cat in my freehold? I'm not sure why that was answered on live stream. Yes, maybe. They don't know.
Because cats. They want to make sure that people who like cats are going to buy the game.
I'm sure the answer was that, sure, we can look into it. Wouldn't be that hard to do. I assume they would. I mean, you're going to have other animals, right? Well, some people will. I will. But,
yeah.
So the last one to kind of talk about, which was also, I think, a good question, just to talk about more broadly, just in the sort of current here and now of alpha, beta, of early access, all these different ways of getting games to market, which the question essentially boiled down to, will the beta be the full game? I don't think it's exactly how it was worded, but basically, well, when we're doing beta, is this more or less a ship game and you're just looking for bugs? The answer to that was no. That is not a released game. Beta is not released. They will intentionally hold things back where they can to sort of make it fun to discover. The specific answer was in the realm of animal breeding, that they will not necessarily in beta have every variation of animal husbandry that you can do. They will only have a certain amount so that you can kind of test, make sure the systems actually work, which makes sense. I like that idea.
Yeah, Steven wants to hold back as much lore and stuff like that as he possibly can. So
yeah, I mean that's kind of, it makes sense to get tests on the mechanics and get tests on the features and give some inkling of the aesthetics and design and all of that, but try to leave as much as possible for the day one reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate
not even day one, but just when we play the game, we get to discover stuff instead of knowing everything ahead of time.
And so here's my other reason for this, and my concern, especially with games that I'm really wanting to release, which is most of what I see. I look at Crowfall and just sort of how flat, and I've talked about this as well, how flat things have really been for their beta launch. It was supposed to be a big deal. Initially, I think there was sort of a rush, but since then, if you look at their Twitter account, they're trying to engage. There's not a lot of engagement back. When I've played, the servers have been pretty low. Not a lot of people on. The first night or two there were, but after that, not so many. And I feel like a big part of that is not that it's maybe necessarily a bad game. It's a unique game, but that they've been in development for 4 years now, and everything has been out there to play basically for 4 years. There's been no big restrictions. It was all out there to bear. And so people, I wonder, this is all a theory, I wonder.
It's been playable the whole time, but it's been a slow grind of putting the features in over that playable time.
And since it's been this people have basically maybe gotten tired of it. There's nothing, special to go jump into and see because you've had the ability to do that for 4 years now.
I'm still waiting until I can keep what I get. If it's still going to be wipe, I don't really care. I get the game. I understand the mechanics. It's cool. I'm excited.
Well, and maybe it will be different on release, but when we talk about these very prolonged development cycles, I do think that when you have a 24/7 server for years, I feel like that hurts sort of the social engagement, the excitement that can come when you hit big milestones like beta, like release. Because then the reaction isn't necessarily, oh cool, it's, oh, you're still making this game. I heard about that game 5 years ago. So I just would hate to see something like that also happen with Ashes of Creation, which it doesn't seem like it would be that way. I think they've specifically also commented they are not going to have 24/7 servers during alpha 2, beta. There will be focused testing, which I 100% think is the best way to go.
Yeah.
If I had my way, people would be back to the old sort of vanilla World of Warcraft days.
It's kind of funny because I actually wrote up a proposal, but I didn't submit it because I have a feeling that the community is going to, in the written formats, just give me a bunch of crap for it. But it's basically the idea that I talked about on Theory Forge going back to when APOC was still around, the idea of giving me a vertical slice, giving players a vertical slice of, let's call it 3 nodes. 2 of them are active. One of them is always covered in mist. Impenetrable, can't get into it mist. And there's interplane interaction between those 2 nodes as the players see fit, as they do, hitting up the places where there's enemies, sieging the castles, etc. Having common places in town square where you can fight, where you can learn combat, little tournaments in the arenas and stuff. Something that gives something that kind of drives gameplay a little bit. Let people kind of, bet on things a little, not necessarily that they're going to earn any resource out of it. Maybe it's some aesthetics that you can only earn during that. So the resources that you would gain during that phase is something that maybe you can get some special shirts or something for. But the intent is that you would use that as the test bed for the various gameplay features and focuses, where at some point, for example, if you want to test a large-scale siege, it will be one of the places where the mist was all set up. The mist now goes down. There's an entire siege force ready. Either players opt or otherwise are assigned to the one side of the siege or the other, and it just starts up. And that's a way to, while you've got the node system kind of up and running and being able to do some of the interplay with it and some of the aspects of a lot of gameplay, also be able to do full-scale tests of anything that you want, to be able to have, dungeon raids and castle sieges and node sieges and all that sort of stuff, to be able to do it in a limited way. And even more, the reason why that mist is important is that while everything's shrouded there, you can completely change the parameters of what's behind there. You could make it a much higher level node. You could make it a different race and religion that's the dominant people there than the last time the attack came from there. So, and what place is actually covered in mist will actually rotate as the things go on. So when the siege starts between point A and point B, the mist now covers, the area that used to be active territory. I don't know if that's necessarily something the developers would want to do. I'm not sure if that's something the players would want. The main reason why I would think the players would oppose it more than anything is that it's forcing the developers to make something that's close to final gameplay and is going to make them make something that we can play with and iterate with, but only be a stopgap and not really be close enough to the full and final systems that they're still going to have to, build the rest of the game after all of the modifications and changes that they do from this, limited sandbox test and all the results from it.
Even though if they wanted to do that, they could just give us 1/5 of the world, and we would still, depending on how we play, that would still give us access to different node types depending on what sieges or what we build up. But it's just a 1/5 of the world slice. That is easy enough to, well, easy enough. They should be able to do that if they wanted to.
Yeah, or a unique thing that's not the actual game world, but is something, analogous to it, so that way they don't screw up the day one reveal of what the actual game world and content is.
Well, I'm just saying, even if they did that, that would still just be 1/5. We've got 4/5 to learn more about.
Nah, they don't want to do that. They want everything to be unique on day one. They've been very clear about that.
Well,
I appreciate it.
It's not going to be everything, because we are going to see some things in that beta that's part of the world.
I mean, you're going to see
1/5.
I don't think the actual final locations of anything is what we're going to see in any of the stuff leading up to.
We'll know the final locations of plenty of stuff in the beta.
Well, we'll see. Because that was one of the reasons why they did the Apocalypse stuff the way they did, is that they wanted it to be something that gives you the look and feel of the world a bit, but at a different point in time or whatever, and in a different place. Like that region in Apocalypse does not exist in the gameplay world. So I'm expecting it's going to be something like that, where it's going to be similar, but it's not actually going to be the live game map that we're playing in the alphas and betas.
Supposedly it's the live game by beta.
One of the problems with using a engine like Unreal or Unity is it is not at all hard to get to the underlying components. So.
Unless you do the thing where you only stream things to players as they access them, then they can limit a lot more. But I don't know if they're doing that.
So there actually was one more question. We're about a little bit over, but this probably wouldn't take much. There was a question about whether will archetypes or classes have specific quests in regards to node sieges. So again, this idea that you can have specific goals. You don't have, if you're not max level, big old fighter person, can you still participate? That's I think the general idea here. Although it was more specific to would a cleric have a certain quest just to it, rogue just to it? The answer to that was unknown, and would need to be equitable. So I guess a balancing issue. But that would be kind of neat, I think. Again,
it can be done in such a funny or even icky way that's like you all have the same quest to go do the same thing in the same place. It's just there's one slight variation. You need to prove this theory that you can backstab a certain type of tortoise that exists in a certain area. Okay, so that gives the rogue the sneaky assassin archetype to be there. So you've got something that needs to be reconsecrated, some old artifact. So now your cleric type has a reason to be there. There's various different reasons why that quest can be set up in such a way that an entire party of 8 can all have the reason to go to the same place at the same time, and they're not doing all of their exact quest components at once, but leaving it to like the final couple rooms of a dungeon, for example, that kind of guarantees that they're all going to go all the way to the end together and complete it. And it's not going to be halfway through the fighter smashes down this wall and grabs this thing that they were looking for. It's like, all right, I'm done here. Bye.
I'm hoping, and I don't know that it necessarily has to be due to quests, but we know that summoners can have a mass summons, a group of summoners to summon a golem that's more powerful than what a single summoner could do. And I'm hoping each class has something like that. I wish we would see more stuff like that, where maybe you need a group of tanks to knock down a door or whatever. So I would like to see reasons to have a party of 4 of the same class or a party of 8 of the same class do something, work together to accomplish something.
And I guess that's the separate issue. Like that's always the words always matter. That's why little kind of quick overviews often miss things because the individual words themselves do matter. I do think what you're talking about obviously will be in. They have talked about that. There are plenty of examples, lifting a shield wall of some sort or summoning a golem of some sort. So I assume the question was more actual quest. Like, is there a quest that you can undergo? Not necessarily a mechanic, but a quest that a class could take. And the answer was not sure.
But
so.
The same thing. I mean, if there has to be a reason to do that,
Yeah,
then that's likely to be tied to some quest at some point. We saw that in the Predator preview 3 years ago, that rogue had the task of sneaking into the city and stealing the relic, and by stealing the relic, that caused the force field that they have to go down, and then people could start their siege. So it seems like there will be tasks that will be best suited to each specific classes. It could be a ranger going invisible or a rogue going invisible. Maybe there's a way for a mage to practically sneak in without using invisibility, but there seems to be at least tasks that will be better suited to certain classes. But,
yeah. Well, and I was wanting to talk a little bit about that with Castle Sieges, but as always, we are out of time. So, yeah, we're actually over. So, there is always another Sunday, though. So,
yeah.
And as always, we have a lot to talk about. So, so for anyone who has this, maybe your first time watching us, we are live every Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 8 p.m. my time Central, and we are here every Sunday. We'll often mix in other games as well. We're not necessarily purely Ashes of Creation, but that is our consistent show is Ashen Forge. So, always come join us, hang out, come join us in Discord. We like to talk, we like to theorycraft. So, hopefully we see you again a week from now. And I'm actually going to start doing more sort of other things as well. So I'm going to try to twice a week start streaming games. I did that with New World this week. And I'm actually going to probably Tuesday, Thursdays are going to be the 2 days where I'm going to try to start doing some more actual games, playing games with New World again. So thanks for watching. And everyone have an awesome week. And we will see you back here in a week. So
See you later, folks. Have a good one.